This Da Vinci's trick will save you sooner than you think. Da Vinci was an artist, a scientist, and an engineer. And so he knew how to think like an artist, a scientist, and an engineer. By doing so, he created a system for coming up with successful ideas. Ideas separate consumers from founders. Because the 1%, the successful 1%, thinks of ideas that nobody else can. Ideas are what makes the most successful people on the planet. But the school system has been taking away people's ability to think of these successful ideas. All the while giving you skills that are not transferable. It's not always on purpose, but still it happens. Anyone that has a head on their shoulders can see the impending doom. To make matters worse, after teaching you to think like robots, they're making robots to think like you, or better. So this video is about helping you to find the right ideas, because some ideas are just stupid. It's teaching you to have ideas more frequently, because people that have amazing, successful ideas have had a bunch of other outlier ideas. That's how they think and how to turn ideas into a way of life. Let's go. Think like an artist. Artists have creative minds. One major attribute of a creative mind is divergent thinking. J.P. Guilford definitely thinks so. Most creative tests today are based on Guilford's work in the 1950s as the ability to envision multiple solutions to a problem. He thinks of divergent thinking as the root of creativity. Having ideas is good because the people that have had outlier ideas that blows into something big are the kind of people that have a bunch of outlier ideas. It's especially a probability thing because if you have a bunch of ideas, one might work. The problem is some ideas are just stupid, useless, and hopeless. Just because you've had a bunch of ideas does not mean they'll be good automatically, even though it's good to have a lot of ideas. Thinking outside the box may be useless if you plan on keeping the box. A lot of times, creative people are wrong, and it's easy to be wrong when you're creative. The most common way creative experiment is by saying things, and if they make you flashy enough, like most charismatic creatives can, it will spread into the population. They may not be alive to see the results, but the results could be catastrophic. It's because there's no due process for testing creatives. Da Vinci was best known as a painter. He did that from a very young age. Da Vinci was definitely a divergent thinker. His notes are very random. He had things like the human anatomy, man, woman, children, even drawings of horses. He was drawing military designs, cats, dragons, horses, lions, water pipes, paintings, drawings, sculpting, engineering, architecture, invention, poetry, maths, physics, music, cooking, even astronomy. And sometimes he was accurate. Too accurate. In his notes he wrote, "The sun does not move." So you know he had a wide pool of knowledge. He had fluid intelligence, which is the ability to generate, transform, and manipulate different kinds of new information in real time. He had that going for him. So we've established that artists are divergent thinkers. They have a lot of ideas. But quantity of ideas is really a marker of quality of ideas. So you have to think like a scientist. We all know who a scientist is. A scientist is someone that systematically gathers information and research and evidence to make a hypothesis and test them, to gain and share understanding and knowledge. So you see the differences already between an artist and a scientist. Artists gather information sometimes on whim with no laid out system. It's not often very consequential because sometimes you just want to make a movie or a song, a sculpture, concept art to see things from a perspective. As I said, they don't really test these things before they gather them. It just spreads into the culture. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's just entertaining. Scientists, on the other hand, as we've seen, they have a very systematic way of gathering research and evidence. And even after they do that, it will be a hypothesis, not the solution. It's not the way forward, it's just a hypothesis. That's understandable because science is mainly for practical uses and not just for entertainment or food for thought. So you see a lot of convergent thinking with scientists, which is the opposite of divergent thinking. Convergent thinking is when you're trying to slim down all the information you have into one option to move forward. They ask things like, what is the best solution? Is it applicable? No, drop it. A lot of time with creative work, if something doesn't work, I keep it in my head and maybe I'll need it in the future. But that's not always how scientific work is. Things are valued for their utility. Sure, he wasn't the only one drawing anatomy, but he went deeper. He was interested, so he went deeper. He had dissected an old man, a 100-year-old man, to understand it. It wasn't guesswork. He narrowed it down to what it was. The muzzle to bone alignment in his work is very precise. Some say his work could be used in a modern medicine textbook, which is actually very impressive. Da Vinci even knew enough to draw comparison between a horse's leg and a human's leg. He had done a lot of work that people only fully recognized in years to come. Charles Darwin declared humans and apes related 350 years after Da Vinci. Think like an engineer. I was in university for 3 years studying engineering, and the most common definition of engineering here is the practical application of science. And I think engineering is actually the most important part of learning. Engineering application. Engineering is the final stage of testing science, and it's very important because it's back to the drawing board if it doesn't work out. Everything can be fine on paper. So you put it in the real world so you can go up against real problems. It's the hardest phase of an idea. Most people don't make it to this stage. Da Vinci was an engineer. He had made structures, he had designed things, he had designed pipes, he had worked on structures. He was more of a civil engineer. And of course, he was a teacher. How could I forget Da Vinci was a teacher? I think the next best thing in terms of trying ideas in the world and seeing if they're useful, the next best thing to engineering is teaching. The thing about teaching is a form of bringing ideas into the light. You have to get worthy students who are interested in the topic, because if you do so, you'll be able to fortify your ideas. Let them fight other ideas, see how well they go up against the truth. The truth is foundational facts that are so true that they become the base for other ideas to stand on. They resonate everywhere around. Situations keep leading back to the truth every day. The more time something is referenced, the more it is recognized as a base truth. To get good students, first of all, as you teach it, you'll be able to understand it better. And then, when they ask questions, you have to defend them. If it's a good idea, it will survive the onslaught of attacks. If it's a bad idea, it will die. Also, when ideas are in your head, the more jumbled they are. They don't have a structure, they're just trains on trains of thoughts. It's when you give them structure, that's when they have structure. So, Da Vinci was also a teacher. He had many students. So you've seen Da Vinci taught like a scientist, an artist, an engineer, and even a teacher. I even saw this quote the other day on Wikipedia. Leonardo's approach to science was observational. He tried to understand the phenomenon by describing and depicting it in utmost detail, and did not emphasize experiments or theoretical explanations. Since he lacked formal education in Latin and mathematics, contemporary scholars mostly ignored Leonardo the scientist. So you're saying that he had a very unconventional way of thinking, even about the science. He had a mixture of these things working for him. I think that's the reason that Da Vinci was as successful as he was. But most of that is lost today. They don't teach people to think like that. We go to school to specialize. Education has gotten so specific, and specific education is not such a bad thing. Especially in professions like medicine, engineering, we need people to specialize. Founders and entrepreneurs, they don't think that way. They have to have broad knowledge. They have to know how to direct a bunch of people. They have broad knowledge. Whereas workers, they have specific knowledge. The current layout we use for our education is from 19th century Prussia. Factory workers were specifically trying to make workers docile, punctual, and sober. And that's what our educational system is based on. That's right. And now they're creating AI to do the robots thinking that they trained you to do. Founders, entrepreneurs, leaders, they don't think like robots. They think like Da Vinci. Because of the broad education he was given in his apprenticeship, he had tools for divergent thinking. He was also a convergent thinker because of the deep science background he had. He learned to recognize quality ideas, and he had the right tools he needed to zero in on the right engineers. He made sure of that because he was an engineer. He could understand his own mind properly, which is a very hard thing to do. I really think he having apprentices helped him. Him being a teacher helped him with that. And these are the tools you need. These are the tools that the leader needs. Do you know that Da Vinci started designing tanks and other stuff years before they became a thing? It was just a drawing and not that accurate. So the ideas were obviously a tank. If he had engineered on it, if he had put his designs to the test, and it didn't work, it would be back to the drawing board for him. And then he'll do the process again till he gets a working system. Today, scientists have improved on the tank he was designing at the workplace. Or if he had engineered it, he would have get an amazing achievement under his belt. He did have quite a few though. He was described as a mind way before his time. So ask yourself this. If we have more knowledge at our fingertips than Da Vinci did, why do we do less? Why? It's because the artistic side is lost to scholars. We do things so systemically that we follow a step-by-step process and don't move forward exponentially. Leaders and entrepreneurs, on the other hand, are known to move forward exponentially. I mean, someone has to control the robots. I mean, the other robots. So let me give you a step-by-step of how leaders get ideas and how they work on them. Step 1, they start with a goal in mind. A goal is important because a goal is a very large target. There are a bunch of ways you can get there. So you get a lot of ideas, a lot of paths on how to get to your goals because the goal was a broad target in the first place. So it gives you room to generate ideas. Don't start like a scientist, gather systematically. Just gather. Like Da Vinci, the tank came to him because he promised his patron that he'll be able to get the soldiers into the enemy's camp safely while they were able to attack at the same time. That's why the tank came to mind, because he had a goal. So then your mind gets creative. You can now start to build things. So you have to start like an artist, not a scientist. Don't start systematically, because if you take what you have, you can only move one step ahead. And a lot of amazing innovations we've had were several of steps ahead. You don't get the type of support you get by going one step ahead. I mean, we were from horses to cars or engines. We were from computer-like stuff to phones. And no one ever thought they'll catch up. But when you support it in science, when it flushes out, that's when people begin to see the utility. But the first step, you have to think like an artist. So step 2, you think like a scientist by making the ideas into systems. Or you have to strengthen the ideas in science so it can actually work. You have to make systems to code the ideas to make it solid. Because most creative ideas are barely solid. Then step 3 is the engineering phase. You try them, and if they don't work, it's back to the drawing board for you. You have to do that several times until it works out. Then step 4, in the meantime, you try to teach people how you got to that point so they can learn and so you can fortify your ideas. If they ask questions, you fix it. I saw this interview with Elon Musk the other day.
You don't even need a cold gas thruster system. You already have hot gas.
But this is only for the booster, right?
Yes. Although arguably, now you mention it, we might be wise to do this for the ship too. We're gonna fix that.
Jeez.
I'd say that's like one of the biggest improvements that we've made. It occurred to me while I was explaining it to you. I was like, wait, what are we doing?
Really, it's good to show your work. Also, you could pitch to people, and by pitching to people, you learn how to package your ideas, which is a very interesting thing to learn. These are the systems you need to do to create an idea like I think Da Vinci would. So, what is your assignment? What to do? Do something you love. Work on a goal that interests you. Because that's really when ideas really flows. When you do things you love. Be mindful of how you got to these ideas and try your best to disprove them while making a case for all of them. What does that mean? Think. It means think. Even though you don't use the ideas that didn't work out, you may find a way to use them in the future. And as you keep it in your mind, just in the corner of your mind, it develops, make systems for the ideas that you choose to go forward. You have to be careful because creativity can kill systems and systems can kill creativity. But as you work on them more and more, you learn how to strike a balance, execute on the plans, and you output to learn more. I think a very good system for outputting ideas is social media. You learn different types of thinking, divergent and convergent, while teaching people at the same time. You can use the systems I have given to you to learn how to think up ideas and follow them to the last stage to build something up. Something that's yours. If you want to learn how to think like an artist, then you should probably learn how to think like a con artist. No one thinks like an artist better than con artist. Watch this video.